Welcome back. This is Module 4B. We're going to talk about product planning, price planning, and customer service. Here's our objectives. We're going to look at the various components of product planning and why they're important. Talk about pricing and different strategies. Then we'll take a look at core competency, what you do well, what you should outsource, and how that impacts the new venture, the new business startup. And then we're going to talk about customer service. Unfortunately, customer service frequently gets thought of as an afterthought, but it's extremely important in today's industries and very important to the entrepreneur, and consequently should be thought of very, very early in the product planning and market planning process. Market planning looks at what you should have heard about a lot in prior courses, either in a marketing course or a management course, and that's the marketing mix. The marketing mix. And there are 4 pieces to the marketing mix. I like to think of it as the 4 P's. Product, the components, the brand name, the options, the materials that are in it. And I'm going to use the word product in this lecture, but it means service as well. I'll use product just for simplicity, but again, it applies to a service type business as importantly as a tangible product type business. Price, again, whether it's for a product or service, price is very important. Not only the price that it sells for, but that is related to the image or perceived quality that the product has, and what kind of discounts you give, and so forth, particularly in a business-to-business environment. How do you get your product to the ultimate user, be it a business customer or a consumer? They call it, the textbook calls it channels of distribution. I prefer place, so that we can call it the 4 P's of the marketing mix: product, price, place, and lastly, promotion, which is advertising, personal selling, public relations, and we're going to talk about that in a separate module. Product planning is a 5-stage process. We've got to establish some criteria. Why? Well, if we don't know what good enough is or what we want, we may have a hard time getting there. If we are the inventor, that we talked about earlier in an earlier module, and we're concerned about getting out this perfect product into the marketplace, we may miss the window of opportunity we talked about in the last module. The window of opportunity may be too short. Somebody else may get in there and suck up the market share and leave us nothing. We have to decide what is acceptable, what is good enough to get out there with a quality image that we want to have. Quality and price image, again, and price and quality are interact with each other, and have to decide, how can we do it? We do some brainstorming. We do I talk to focus groups, talk to consumers, talk to retailers, find out what the product ideas, what business ideas are out there. Try to build something. Another word for a concept stage could be prototype. prototypes. Build one, build quantity one, see what the market, put it out there, see what customers think about it, take it to different places, take it to trade shows, see what happens, see what the pros, what feedback you get, good and bad. We'll talk more about that in a second. Concept cars have long been a thing in the automobile industry. The new Thunderbird that was introduced a few years ago was originally introduced as a concept car a number of years earlier at the automobile shows, and it got they got good feedback on that concept car and decided to make it into a product. Do the actual product development, use a consumer panel to do some testing of it, you want to get feedback so that you can make the product as good as possible. And the fifth stage would be test marketing. Why do you want to do test marketing? Well, you don't want to spend a lot of money that you probably don't have taking a product nationwide or global. You want to see whether it'll fly. Test market it in one area. Boston, Chicago, small towns. See what people think. Do people buy it? If they do buy it, why are they buying it? What's in it that's good? If they don't buy it, why not? Find out. Here's part of the as supplemental reading, second stop, but going back to the concept idea and product development. An interesting article about using this Second Life virtual world to do some virtual testing of product and get some feedback to ideas. Interesting idea. The advocates who like it are of course saying that it's great. Hasn't caught on in a major fashion, but again, kind of cutting edge kinds of things that you're probably more familiar with Second Life than I am. Visited once or twice, but that's about it. A product goes through a life cycle, 5 different phases. This is what the product life cycle looks like. In the first phase, you've got research and development. You haven't got a product, so your sales are zero. Okay? You're spending money on engineering, on research, on putting the product together. Okay, so your profits, your out-of-pocket costs are continuing to grow, which means negative, that you're losing more and more money each day, and that's the cumulative part. The start of the introduction phase is your first product ship. You finally get a product, you finally get it out into the marketplace, and you start selling them. But you'll note that during the introduction phase that you're losing more and more money. You're continuing to lose money. You haven't started to make a profit yet. Okay? Why is that? Well, it's probably because you are still spending a lot of money. Some money's coming in, but you're spending a lot more on advertising, on developing your distribution system, on getting your retailers in place, just spending lots and lots of money on marketing and distribution. Well, at some point that levels out and your sales increase enough that you start to recoup some of this profit. And you're still in a negative, okay, but you're starting to recoup some of the costs that you put out. The start of the growth phase is where you hit the break-even point in terms of time, where you've recouped or recovered the money that you've initially spent. And sales are really, really starting to go up then. And your profits go up and your sales continue to climb. At some point, the profits max out and start to turn down. Even though you'll note that in this stage your sales are still growing, okay, but your profits are declining. More competitors have come in, maybe other substitutes have come in, and you're having to reduce your prices. Maybe your costs have increased. Maybe you're having to give rebates. But one way or another, you're squeezed. And at some point, your sales hit their peak and then start to decline. In this maturity phase, which is usually the longest phase of the product cycle, you're still doing okay. You're still profitable, but your profits are getting squeezed. I would suggest that things like the computer industry, the laptop industry, are kind of in that phase now, where they're squeezed for their profits are getting squeezed real hard, and that is a problem. At some point, you hit the decline phase where sales really start to go down, and profits are starting to dwindle to almost nothing. In that phase, you have to decide whether you're going to kill the product, reposition it, find a new use for it, or do something. Finding a new use, Arm & Hammer, with its baking soda, found their sales a number of years ago going down. They repositioned the product as a odor absorber. For the refrigerator, cat litter box, put it in the swimming pool to maintain the proper pH of the water. It's helped. All right, the product is still there. Of course, you can kill the product and start another product. Can you consider maybe increasing the price to recoup some of your margin? Well, the answer is maybe. The answer is yes in certain areas. Let's assume the product is white wall tires. Not too many cars these days have or want, car owners want white wall tires. However, if you own a 59 Cadillac or a 57 Chevy vintage car, you may want those white walls, and you are probably willing to pay premium prices to get those white wall tires. So you've kind of created, the manufacturers kind of created a niche market for that specific product, which was considered obsolete and declining and could have been phased out. Again, it becomes a niche market. In terms of products, the matrix here, you want to be positioned someplace in one of these four boxes and avoid the center. Low cost, broad market, think Walmart. Okay. Broad market, maybe with a differentiation, maybe Neiman Marcus, Saks, those kinds of stores. Obviously, you've got low price niche markets, maybe your Best Buys, that's selling just electronics. Down here, this would be Gucci, Versace, Brookstone maybe. The place where you don't want to be is in the middle here, where the customer doesn't see you as the best price in town, nor do they see you as having the best sales staff, the best selection, the most knowledgeable salespeople, anything like that, all right? And here's where I get into trouble. I believe that companies like Sears and Kmart now, which is the same, are in this danger zone. There's no clear image. They're not the best in appliances, and they're certainly not the lowest price. It's a problem. Hotels, obviously your Ritz-Carlton is down in here. Motel 6 maybe over in the low-cost niche market. Other folks don't know, again, different opinions. The Comfort Inns, those kinds of things are maybe up here. I believe, again, the ones in the danger zone are outfits like Holiday Inn, where many of them are, again, don't offer the best price, but they don't offer any distinct advantages. So again, try to stay out of that danger zone. If you decide that you're going to be the low-cost game in town, that's fine. But understand that you need a lot of capital. You've got to get your processes down to very efficient, very tight cost control. If you're a manufacturer, you've got to make sure that you can produce it cheaply, in good quality, and in volume. Find a low-cost distribution mechanism. Walmart's done that. They distribute themselves. They don't use middlemen. And in a business-to-business environment, offer quantity discounts, quantity pricing. If, on the other hand, you're over here in the differentiation, unique market, you got to convince people that you're worth it, that you're worth that higher price, that high image. So you need to have a good marketing organization, maybe creative salespeople and creative people to produce the products. Got to have a good image. Got to be kind of state of the art. Again, think Brookstones. And maybe you have cooperative distribution. You have your own stores like Apple, or stores that at least focus on the products that you want and have knowledgeable sales staff. Everything has a risk associated with it, and in this case, if you're the cost leader, either your costs can increase, or the technology that you've invested in, the product that you're building changes. You were building low-cost VCRs. Now nobody wants VCRs, or not many people. Makes you make major changes. Your product becomes obsolete. A differentiator, comes up with a better variant on it, something that's better than your generic version. Generic drug companies have that problem. Because, a big pharmaceutical may come out with a new prescription drug that makes the old one obsolete. And of course, bad marketing, if you're a low-cost operator, you may not spend a lot of money on marketing. On the other hand, if you're over here, the differentiation type of company, knockoffs can be a big problem. Despite, are there ways to protect? Yes, in the piece on intellectual property, we'll talk about protecting stuff, but particularly in a global market, protecting products and protecting yourself from knockoffs can be a real problem. And what can also happen is that the customer, the buyer, doesn't perceive a clear difference. You may think there's a clear difference, but the marketplace, the customer says, hey, I think this $6 bottle of wine is as good as your $12 bottle of wine, so I'm not going to buy yours. That's a problem. From a product standpoint, we want to look at how to grow our market, how to grow the demand for our product. We can either sell our existing products to our existing type of customer, Two ways. One, to get the people to buy more, get our existing customers to buy and use more, buy more milk, that kind of thing, use more of it, buy it more frequently. Or we can go after our competitors' market share, Coke versus Pepsi, steal customers from the competition. That can work. We can sell new products to those existing markets, and that's usually based on the fact that your best prospect is usually your existing customer. If the customer bought your existing product and likes it, chances are when you come out with something new, you're going to buy that. If you're happy with your old Sony videotape camcorder, you will quite likely buy a Sony high-def DVD recorder or hard disk recorder. All right. Again, brand image has a lot to do with that, but customer satisfaction plays a lot with that. You could sell your existing products to new markets. That could be new countries, going global. It could be finding a new target group, selling it to senior citizens, selling it to teenagers, selling it to the preteen market, in a different, slightly different variant. But again, opening up new markets, looking for a new group who needs and wants our product. Over here in the bottom right, selling new products to new markets is the toughest because you have a product that hasn't been tested in the marketplace, and you're dealing with a new set of customers who you don't really know. So that's it's risky. In the expansion portion of this course, when we talk about growth and expansion, I'll mention that, come back and revisit this, but a lot of companies, if they're looking at new products to new markets, diversification, they'll go out and buy that capability. FedEx was challenged by UPS. UPS went into the overnight air market space, and FedEx couldn't compete against UPS on the ground. FedEx only had an air-based logistical system, and FedEx could have wanted to compete broadly with UPS and could have gone off and built it literally from the ground up, but instead they chose to buy roadway package service from Roadway Trucking, and roadway package service became FedEx Ground. They bought an existing capability, processes, equipment, and it was much safer, less risk in doing it that way than building it themselves. Okay, let's look at pricing. There are basically three ways of doing pricing. Traditional engineering mentality tells us to use cost-based, your fixed costs and your variable costs. We've talked about that. But the problem is for an entrepreneurial outfit, a new business, it's very hard to get a solid handle on your fixed costs and even on your variable costs frequently. So most companies, when they start up, start with pricing on based upon competition. And if you think back to our little business model in the first week, we went out and found out, for consulting purposes, for Bob's consulting business, what was our competition charging, and we tried to fit someplace within that bracket. It's easier. Prestige pricing, if you want an elite image, again, is a $12 bottle of wine better than a $6 bottle of wine? Maybe. the vendors, the manufacturers, the vintners who produce that $12 bottle of wine certainly want you to think it is, and they price it accordingly. Are expensive cars like Lexus and Jaguar that much more expensive to manufacture than, say, a Toyota or a Chevrolet? Probably not, but again, you want to give this elite image. Now, part of the question is there are some dangers in excuse me, in pricing. If you price based on competition, you have to be careful to make sure that you track it carefully, because if you're too low, what's going to happen? You're going to be unprofitable. All right, that's no good. If you're too high, then the customer, again, may not perceive a clear difference, as we had in a previous slide, that you're worth it. You have to decide whether or not your product is worth what you hope the customer is going to pay for it. There are some strategies for pricing. If you're in the market early, first one out, you've got a great product and people really seem to love it, you can skim, get get short-term profits, or as the Japanese did a number of years ago with semiconductor chips and memory chips, was to gain market share by coming in at low price, offering discounts, buy one get one free in the consumer marketplace, for a new soft drink, gain initial market share, gain acceptance of your product. Again, don't necessarily have to price it low, but you could offer, again, buy one get one free, or coupon discounts, those kinds of things. Consumer pricing, yeah, you want to get market share. Coke versus Pepsi, constant price wars. Gasoline tends to stay around the same price from from oil company to oil company. You can also have a loss leader. All right. The old saying from many, many years ago was give away the razor and sell the razor blades. Use the razor as a loss leader and make it up on selling replacement blades for it. Today, I think some of the companies like Hewlett-Packard and Lexmark are doing that with printers. Give away the printers and sell the cartridges. That can work, but again, you have to be careful. In the printer cartridge thing, you see these companies like Cartridge World coming around that are refilling the cartridges and taking away some of that very profitable replacement business. So there's a risk involved in any strategy. There's another one that the text doesn't talk about, but I'll just mention in passing, and it's something called demand pricing or demand-oriented pricing. And in mature markets, the best example I can think of is gasoline. The price goes up and down based upon demand. It has nothing to do with the cost to produce it or its availability. It's strictly based upon demand. And again, gas prices go very high, then they come down when demand drops, and we go through that vicious cycle. There's some terminology, some terms that you should know. Margin is defined as the selling price minus the cost of goods sold. In the finance piece, we saw that. That's your revenue, your sales minus your cost of goods sold gives you your margin. Okay. In terms of price of a product, again, if the product costs you $1 to make it and you sell it for $2, your margin is $1. Markup, which is used in the retail in industries is defined as percentage of the selling price over cost. So if it costs you $1 and you mark it up 50%, the selling price is $2. Again, $1 cost, mark it up 50%, you actually double the price, okay, because it's the percentage of the selling price. Or your markup is of the $2 selling price, your markup is 50%. Another concept you should know about is inventory turns. And very simply, what it amounts to is the more often you can turn your inventory, the more profitable you are. Let's take a simple example. Let's assume we're selling rocking chairs. Each rocking chair costs $100. I sell one chair every 3 months out of my little craft store or you know, antique boutique kind of store. I sell one rocking chair every 3 months. Well, in order to make $365 a year, okay, $365 a year on my $100 investment, and I sell 4 chairs a year, I have to sell each chair for $191. Why is that? Well, because my profit, if I sell it for $191, the chair costs me $100, I make $91. So I sell chair number 1. For $191, I take $100 out of that $191, go buy another chair for inventory. Okay, put the $91 in my pocket. 3 months later, I sell that chair for $191. Again, I take the $100, go buy another chair to sell, and take the remaining 91, put that in my pocket. Now I got 182. Well, if I do this 4 times during the year, I make $364. So I have to have a pretty high markup on that, or pretty high margin to make $364. On the other hand, a supermarket typically may work on 1 or 2% margins. How do they do that? Well, they turn their inventory almost every day, or at least every couple of days. If I can turn my inventory every day on a 1% margin, I can make my $365 in a year on my $100 investment. Okay, because every day I take my $100 worth of stuff and sell it for $101, take the dollar and put it in my pocket, take the 100, buy another day's worth of stuff, sell that the next day, put that dollar in my pocket, buy another 100. So again, our investment is in terms of, and we're going to talk about ratios and things a little further down in the course. I'll come back and revisit. When we talk about ratios, we'll see that we're still getting a good return on our investment. We are still getting $365 per year on our $100 investment in either model. But the faster we turn our inventory, the lower the margin we can work on. Okay, an example. I don't know if anybody has heard of Scott Beck. He started Blockbuster and a couple other things, as you can see here. I don't know if anyone in the class is old enough to remember the old way of renting videotapes, going down and the video store owner had maybe 1 or 2 copies of a given videotape, and you put it on reserve for Friday night or Saturday night, and then brought it back the next day. Blockbuster changed that. Scott Beck changed that by coming up with the ability to have 20 copies of each movie on the shelf instead of 2. Well, how do you do that? Well, the old business model was you buy one tape for $10 from the producer, such as Disney or Warner Brothers, and you had that tape and you rent it out. Scott Beck went to the producers and said, hey, I'll buy them from you for $1 a piece, so I can buy 10 tapes for that $10. And what I'll do is I'll give you 50 cents per rental. And these numbers are not hard and fast numbers. They don't. Blockbuster doesn't release their numbers in that respect. But these are sample numbers. The model is correct. He said, I'll pay you $1 for each copy of the tape, plus I'll give you 50 cents per rental. What did that do? Well, that enabled him to buy 10 tapes with his $10. Or if he had $20, he bought 20 copies instead of 2. What was in it for the producer? Why should they sell it at that low price? Well, they were convinced that the rental, the 50 cents per rental, would wind up generating more than the $10 for the tape. There's an upside and a downside to that for both, and that's what Scott Beck sold to the producers, was the fact that, hey, if you have a great movie and people love it and people want to rent it and view it, you're going to make money, I'm going to make money. On the other hand, if you have a loser, if you put out a dog and it's a loser, you're not going to make money and I'm not going to make money. We share the risk, we share the reward. And it worked, and it worked well. At the time when it first came out, there was a lawsuit by the small shop owners. It didn't go anywhere, died out quickly of its own weight. What would have been a better solution? How about a co-op? In marketing, when we go to the marketing piece, we're going to talk about cooperatives of banding together and for the good. And they could have gone to the producers with the same kind of idea. But they didn't. Again, Scott Beck, an innovator, an entrepreneur. Some quick words on globalization. One of the best books that are currently out there is The World is Flat by Thomas Friedman. May have read it. Version 3.0, he doesn't call it third edition, he calls it version 3.0, is out there. And basically, the premise of the book is that there's been this convergence of you've got this collaboration, you've got this ability to collaborate that we talked about under business ideas globally now, thanks to software, high-speed web, and PCs, and that there are the old hierarchies. We'll talk more in organization, but the old vertical hierarchies of companies is rapidly being replaced by flexible teams and horizontal processes. Again, that can reach globally. And there are lots of new knowledge workers out there. China is moving very quickly to get into the knowledge game. India, of course, is a big player. The former Soviet Union has a great deal of expertise. And again, you have to look and think globally. Let me back up for a second here. There's another book, I mentioned Megatrends by John Nesbitt in the prior module. Megatrends, again, John Nesbitt, Nesbitt. He talks about 3 phases of globalization. In phase 1, nations went global. Countries started getting colonies and developing relationships with other countries. In phase 2, And that phase one goes way back, to the 1500s. Phase two, starting in the 1800s and through the 1900s, companies went global. You saw the multinational companies. In phase three, which has started probably within the last 10 years or so, he submits that individuals must think globally. You have to think widely in terms of where your markets are, where your suppliers are, where even your team is. One of the things he says is to think globally, act locally. Think globally, act locally. What does that mean? Well, look at the market, look at suppliers, look at your team from a global viewpoint. But be aware of the differences that exist. I submit, it is my feeling, that there is no such thing as a global market. And that's probably heresy, okay, at this point. However, I don't think there is a global market. I think there is a globe full of markets, individual markets. What sells in Boston may not sell in Los Angeles. What sells in the United States may not sell in France or Germany or India or Africa. You have to look at each market individually. In a similar fashion, you have to look at your team and be aware of the cultural differences, and we'll talk about more about that in team development. Okay, this is a posting. Take a look. It's posting number 7. Come back to me. We'll get some dialogue. Here's another silly game. That's posting 8. Give it a try. See what you come up with. Again, we'll discuss that in the forum. All right, let's take a look at what we do well in terms of product and market planning. Process of benchmarking is defined. Core competencies. What do we do better, do as well or better than anybody else? And Jack Welch, formerly of GE, that was his philosophy. Focus on core competencies. Well, if you're going to focus on your core competency and outsource everything else, it could mean that it's been outsourced to the past, no longer exists. Answering services, people answering your phones, not too big a business these days. Most companies and even small businesses have voicemail, or at least answering machines as opposed to somebody sitting at an answering service. In some businesses, doctors and that still continue to use them for their personal service. You can bring another company in. Papa John's delivery system is run by UPS. Its drivers get directions from the UPS system. You can, if you do something really, really well that are not core competencies of other people, you can sell it, make a business out of it. And of course, typically outsourcing means setting stuff out. Another variant on this is, it's becoming popular now, are virtual assistants. We'll talk more about that in a second. Developing partners. We'll talk more about in the expansion and growth of the business. We'll talk about joint ventures, strategic alliances, things like that. But again, that's one way of doing what you have to do, focusing on your core competencies. But as a small company or even as a medium-sized company, you don't want to eliminate too much. You don't want to create too small a niche. Look at Polaroid. Polaroid was a single product company. The company followed that product life cycle chart that I showed earlier. It went down in flames, became nothing. Now all it is a name that's been licensed out to lots of different companies. Hopefully your company, each product has a product life cycle, and while you're in the growth stage on one product, you're in the research and development stage on another product. And you've got a bunch of product life cycle charts that kind of overlay each other in shifted layers, again, so that you have existing products bringing in profits while some other products are declining and going out of phase and other products are in development. So again, you don't want to be a single product company. That's dangerous. Can you adapt? Are you too specialized? What business are you in? What business is Exxon in? Oil or energy? I would hope energy. Disney? Movies? Family entertainment, right? Interesting. From a small business standpoint, you want to be able to focus on your core competencies, but stay adaptable. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. Don't concentrate on one particular type of product or service in case it goes away. You can create strategic alliances. That was one of the things on one of the prior charts. Doesn't have to be a formal deal. Handshake, cross referrals. You help me, I'll help you. And you don't have to own the whole thing. You can be a subcontractor if the job is too big for you. Partner with somebody else. Put together a joint venture. I've had architect firms that have done that because the job was too big for any one of the individual firms, but together as a joint venture, they went after it and won it. You can be the general contractor, or you can be the sub. You can outsource the stuff that you don't want to do. Don't even need to have people in the office. The virtual assistant I mentioned before is becoming an in thing, where one person who works out of his or her house acts as the, quote, secretary or office person for several different companies. Different phone lines, forwarded, and you don't know where that person is. You don't know that office manager is not in the psychiatrist's office or the lawyer's office. Don't need to. Okay, last topic in this module is customer service. It is not an afterthought. Too many companies in the past have treated customer service as, if it breaks and a customer calls, somebody has to answer the phone. It's been tech support. What happens when something goes wrong? It's not that. It's more than that. It involves upfront order placing, problem solving, and everything else. And you can see there are different ways of doing it. There's no one answer. It's a combination. Is our product better? And it's not necessarily that the product itself is better. Again, quality, real or perceived, brand image, choices, colors, features. Cost, price, our product could be better because it's lower cost, and it may not just be price. It may be easier to get, less hassle, easier to buy, an easier to use website, a convenience store where we can run in and run out, delivery. Sometimes time is money. You need it now. Customer service comes in before the sale, helping people figure out what they should buy, which model, which type of product they should buy, which camcorder, DVD camcorder is right for my particular needs and particular budget. And of course, after the service, the traditional warranty and tech support. Here's just some words, kind words from a company that does customer service type seminars. They do a lot of them for the Internal Revenue Service. Connect, attentive, responsible. You can use the web. CaseSoft, as an example, is a software company. They send out a monthly newsletter that just has little tips and stuff that people have told them, and again, tips for using their software. Keeps in touch with the customer. Kohler and other plumbing manufacturers outsourced their older products, discontinued products, replacement stuff to a little company in New Hampshire that if you needed a, say, a toilet seat for a 1975 vintage toilet, a special version of a Kohler toilet, what they would do is, these things were no longer made. This company, this little tiny company, entrepreneurial company, once a week would send out, or once a month would send out they would collect all these requests of what people were looking for. You'd say, hey, I'm looking for this in this color, this model, and so forth. And they would send out an email, broadcast email, to every plumbing supply house in North America and see if they have that. And in my case, I needed something like that, and sure enough, some plumbing supply house in San Jose, California, had one sitting in the back room gathering dust for the last 20 some odd years that he thought he'd never sell. And lo and behold, here's a customer in New Jersey who is willing to buy it and willing to pay list price. This little company, this customer service outfit, that is nothing more than a couple of telephones and computers, they get their 10% as a finder's fee. Customer relationship software is a big thing, and we'll, talk about some of that on a posting. And basically, there are lots of products out there for a small business. You do not necessarily need a big CRM package from somebody like Microsoft or things like that. Programs like ACT, Goldmine, even Outlook can give you information, can provide you with a customer database. So you remember who your customers are. Clients if you're in a service business. So you know who they are, what they bought, what they did. Land's End is very good at doing that, at tracking what you have purchased and what colors, what styles, so that they can target their catalogs and advertisements to you. Customer service can also involve websites. I don't know, one of the questions is, one of the big things these days are coming into being is customer reviews on a website, which is a good idea. You can post a review of the product that you bought, but be careful. If you're the manufacturer, be careful, because make sure you read it. Because I've been to a couple of websites where I was looking at a product and I read the reviews, and after I read the reviews I said, I don't really think I want to buy this thing, because some of the customers came back and said it's really, really a problem. The supplemental reading, you'll see some articles that deal with with that kind of thing. Okay, as we move forward, we have to worry about the marketing plan and the product portion of the marketing plan. And here's just an overview, and we're going to come back and revisit this as to how we develop that marketing plan. And here's the portion of the business plan that is the marketing plan, and you'll see that our market analysis, our industry analysis are part of this, our pricing, what's our product going to be, and in subsequent modules we're going to talk about distribution and promotion. All right, this again has been a long module. In our next week, we're going to explore legal structure, the issues of once your business is up and running, things like contracts and warranties and so forth. We're also going to look at intellectual property, patents, trademarks, copyrights. Make sure you read the supplemental readings and the read for next week material. And